In a storage drawer at the University of Pennsylvania Museum, a palm-sized clay tablet sits labeled Scribal Exercise, Nippur, Old Babylonian Period, Damaged, Unremarkable. A scan revealed one word in the middle column that does not belong in any vocabulary list. Kalû, the Akkadian verb to withhold. Why would a school tablet use confiscation language? That word connects to Enki and to a list made before the council met. The tablet has been in the collection since the early 20th century. It arrived from the ancient city of Nippur, once the religious center of Mesopotamia, the place where heaven and earth were said to meet. Thousands of tablets came from Nippur. Most of them were exactly what they appeared to be: administrative records, hymns, legal contracts, and school texts in which student scribes practiced copying vocabulary. This tablet was classified with the school texts. It was filed, boxed, and shelved. The catalog sticker did its job. For most of the century, no one looked past it. Then, a restoration specialist examining a batch of Nippur fragments under enhanced imaging noticed something that should not have been there. Cuneiform only reveals itself under oblique light at exactly the right angle. When the scanner crossed the surface at 45 degrees, a word appeared in the middle column. Not a damaged word, not a copying error, a clean, deliberate impression. The word was kalû. In Akkadian, the language of ancient Babylon, that verb means to hold back, to retain, to withhold from distribution. In temple storeroom records, it appears on lines where goods were received but not passed on. It is the language of a transaction that stopped. You know that feeling when you find one impossible word in the middle of an ordinary document, and suddenly the document is not ordinary anymore. That is what happened here. The safe explanation is scribal error, a student copying a line from a different source by accident. Mainstream scholars treat it as damaged context, too incomplete to carry interpretive weight. And they may be right, but the word is attached to a phrase that lists human attributes. In Sumerian and Akkadian texts, when you attach kalû to a list of human attributes, it does not read like poetry. It reads like a record of something that was prepared but never delivered. To understand why that is disturbing, you need to know what the me were. The me, pronounced may, were the divine decrees of Sumerian civilization, not laws, not rituals, something closer to the underlying code of reality itself. Kingship was a me. The scribal art was a me. Wisdom was a me. The descent into the underworld was a me. There were roughly 90 to 100 of them, and they were believed to exist as physical objects, things that could be held, carried, displayed, and transferred. In myth, they were stored in the E-abzu, Enki's temple at Eridu, the oldest continuously occupied sacred site in Mesopotamia, dating back to 5,000 years before the Common Era. Enki was their keeper. He was the god of wisdom, subterranean waters, hidden knowledge, and the invisible mechanisms of creation. He decided what the me could do, and according to at least one text, he decided who received them. Imagine a list of everything civilization is allowed to know. Every tool, every craft, every social institution, every piece of knowledge that makes ordered life possible. Enki had them all. The myth of Inanna and Enki records the moment she came to Eridu and he gave them away. Kingship, godship, the scribal art, the art of the smith, descent into the underworld, victory, and dozens more. Scholars note that some entries appear damaged or out of sequence. But there is one structural detail that several researchers have found difficult to explain. The list appears to end before it should, not because the tablet broke, because the final entry was never pressed into the clay. One translator working from a 1960s photograph of a related fragment made a marginal note that has never been formally addressed. He wrote that the final entries in his fragment read more like an inventory than a hymn. He did not elaborate. The paper moved on. The note remained in the margin. The Nippur tablet with the kalû entry sits in that silence. The Adapa myth is one of the strangest texts to survive from ancient Mesopotamia. It exists in fragments across 3 separate sites: Tel Hadad in Iraq, the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, and a third location that is almost impossible to explain by accident. The story is about a man named Adapa, the wisest human who ever lived, the first of Enki's 7 sages, the kalû. Enki created him with exceptional intelligence. And then, the text states explicitly, withheld immortality from him. When Adapa was later summoned to heaven and offered the bread and water of eternal life by the god Anu, he refused. He refused because Enki had told him to. Enki warned him beforehand that what Anu would offer was the bread and water of death. It was not. Anu's offer was genuine. Enki's warning was not. Scholars dispute whether that was deception or protection. The third tablet is fragmentary, the ending genuinely uncertain. But the verb the Adapa text uses for what Enki did, for the act of not telling Adapa the truth, is the same Akkadian root as kalû: to hold back, to retain, not to give what was prepared. 2 texts, different genres, different periods, different purposes. One word appears in the same grammatical position in both. In the vocabulary fragment from Nippur, it is attached to a list of human attributes. In the Adapa myth, it describes what Enki chose not to pass on to the first human sage. On its own, that could be coincidence, but then a digital researcher working across the 3 Adapa fragments placed the tablet scans side by side on a light table. Nippur on the left, the Adapa fragment on the right, the same root, the same position, the same grammatical form, not the same sentence, the same behavior. That is where the safe explanation starts to bend. In the Atrahasis epic, another genuine Akkadian text composed in the 17th century BCE, the Anunnaki Council convenes to decide the fate of humanity. Enki is in that room. He proposes the creation of humans to relieve the gods from labor. The council agrees. A god is sacrificed, clay is mixed with blood, and the human template is set. Then later in the same text, when Enlil decides to destroy humanity with the flood, Enki goes against the council's decision and warns one man in secret. He speaks through a wall. He tells Atrahasis to build a boat. He does not tell the council he is doing this. He acts on his own again. The alternative reading of the Nippur tablet, and it must be stated clearly that this remains speculative, unconfirmed, and contested, is that the tablet does not describe what humans received. It describes what was prepared. And one line in that preparation was marked kalû before the council ever met. Something was set aside, something was held. The council reviewed the list. They approved the template, and the line at the end, the line that follows the kalû entry, is not in the drawer. That page exists. It was photographed in 1903. A field report from the Nippur excavation describes a companion fragment. Further entries, partially damaged, nature unclear. That fragment was assigned a catalog number. It was documented. Its current location is unconfirmed. Some institutional records show it transferred to a second facility. Others list a different accession number entirely. The official reason is reorganization. Archives are genuinely chaotic, and fragments genuinely go missing without conspiracy. But the fragment that contains the entry immediately after the kalû line is the specific fragment that became unavailable for further study. A scholar working on comparative Mede texts in the 1970s published a short paper noting the grammatical anomaly in the Nippur fragment. He referenced the companion fragment as inaccessible. The paper received no formal response. It was neither disputed nor confirmed. It was simply not continued. Old archives do not hide things by locking them away. They hide things by misfiling them, by reclassifying them under a number no one is looking for, by surrounding the strange entry with enough ordinary material that the drawer feels safe. And then, this is the midpoint, the version of the Adapa myth that scholars consider the most complete was not found in Mesopotamia. It was found in Egypt. Specifically, it was found in the diplomatic archive of Pharaoh Amenhotep IV at Tel El Amarna in the 14th century BCE. That is a confirmed archaeological fact. The Adapa myth, a text about Enki withholding something from humanity, about the first human sage being given wisdom and denied the final gift, was preserved not in a Mesopotamian temple, not in a scribal school, but in a royal Egyptian archive used for correspondence between the most powerful states in the ancient world. The official explanation is that the myth circulated as a scribal training text across the Near East, and that Amarna was a cosmopolitan archive with texts in multiple languages. That may be true, but the question is not why it was copied. The question is why a text about what was withheld from humans appeared in a collection of elite diplomatic correspondence, not in a classroom, in a royal archive marked for political exchange between empires. The same word, the same withheld line, a different continent, a different century, a different language, the same grammatical position. Adapa was the first kalû, and the kalû were not a myth in the way gods are myths. They were described as agents, transmitters, specifically tasked by Enki to bring the me to humanity before the flood. 7 sages, partly fishmen, depicted in Assyrian reliefs carrying a bucket and a pine cone, walking in a line. Their function was specific: deliver knowledge from Enki's temple to the human world. If the me list contained a kalû entry, then the kalû were transmitting an incomplete package. They were carrying a distribution, not the full inventory. And after the flood, the texts describe the post-flood kalû as part human, diminished, less powerful than their predecessors. The transmission did not simply stop. According to some alternative researchers, the transmission may always have been incomplete. 7 sages, 7 deliveries. The 8th quality, the one marked withheld, does not appear in any text that has been found. To mainstream scholars, this is symbolic. Ancient cultures created narratives to explain human mortality and limitation, and the pattern of most but not all appears across mythology because it reflects a universal human experience. The Egyptian Thoth withholding the final formula, the Vedic Rita as cosmic order only partially accessible to mortals, Prometheus giving fire, but not the knowledge of death's timing. The mainstream explanation for each tradition is separate and internally sufficient. But the pattern across all of them, a divine distributor, a prepared list, and one item held back, has no unified official account. The question is not whether any single text proves a shared event. The question is why the structure keeps returning with the same grammar across civilizations that are not supposed to have spoken to each other. There is one more layer to this. The Adapa myth's 3rd tablet is genuinely broken. What remains suggests that Anu was displeased with Enki after the encounter, What exactly Enki was punished for is unclear. The safe reading says Anu was angry that Adapa was deceived. The alternative reading says the punishment came for something else, for the act of withholding, not the act of deceiving. In that reading, the sequence becomes very specific. Enki prepares a list. The council meets. One item is marked kalû. The distribution proceeds without that item. Enki stands before the council afterward and does not mention it. Later, Anu finds out. The clay breaks there. The punishment begins and the text stops. That sequence is speculative. It is built from fragments, disputed translations, and a grammatical reading that mainstream scholars do not accept. The official mythology may be exactly what it appears, a beautiful ancient attempt to explain why humans suffer, die, and cannot reach what the gods possess. But it does not explain the Nippur fragment. It does not explain why the word for withholding appears in a vocabulary list attached to human attributes. It does not explain why the companion fragment is numbered in a 1903 field report and not in the drawer. It does not explain why the most complete version of this particular myth traveled to a pharaoh's diplomatic archive in Egypt. And it does not explain why the paper published in the 1970s pointing to the grammatical anomaly was simply never continued. Today, AI-assisted cuneiform translation tools, real programs actively developed by research institutions, are being applied to fragments in major collections that were photographed decades ago but never fully analyzed. The Nippur collection at the University of Pennsylvania contains thousands of tablets that have been documented but not deeply studied. The companion fragment, if it was reclassified rather than lost, may be in a drawer right now under a different number, waiting for a scan that makes the next line legible. The question is not whether it will be found. The question is what happens to the official reading when the line appears. The drawer in Philadelphia is still closed. The tablet is still labeled scribal exercise, Old Babylonian period. The word kalû is still pressed into the clay, exactly where a vocabulary list should not need it. The companion fragment is still listed in the 1903 field report and still absent from the public catalog. The Adapa myth still ends mid-sentence on broken clay. Adapa was sent back to earth. He received wisdom. He did not receive the last thing Enki had prepared. He left without asking what it was, maybe because Enki had already told him not to. The sticker on the box says nothing important is inside. It has said that for 4,000 years.